If the Demon King failed one more test, humanity would be erased by the end of the semester. The problem was that nobody at Westbridge Human Integration Academy knew the awkward transfer student sitting in the back row was the Demon King. Nobody except the council that had sent him. And unfortunately for me, I was about to become his tutor. My name is Noah Carter, and up until 3 days ago, my biggest concern was paying rent on my tiny apartment and surviving my final year as a graduate assistant. Then Professor Holloway called me into his office and offered me a tutoring job that paid more money than I'd seen in months. Special exchange student, he explained, sliding a file across his desk. Brilliant in some areas, catastrophically behind in others. I opened the folder and stared at the photo clipped to the front. The guy looked like he belonged on a movie poster. Dark silver hair, sharp features, calm gray eyes, the kind of face people remembered. What's he failing? I asked. Professor Holloway adjusted his glasses. Everything. I laughed. He didn't. That should have been my warning. The first tutoring session took place the following afternoon in the library. I arrived 10 minutes early with notebooks, study guides, and enough patience to deal with any struggling student. At exactly 3 o'clock, the chair across from me slid backward. I looked up. The guy from the file stood there. Lucian Vale. Even sitting down, he somehow looked intimidating. Not rude. Not arrogant. Just strangely powerful, like he'd accidentally wandered into the wrong reality and hadn't decided whether to leave yet. Hello, he said. His voice was smooth and careful, as if he'd practiced the word. You're Noah. And you're Lucian. Correct. Silence stretched between us. So, I said, opening a notebook, let's start simple. How are your classes going? Lucian considered the question seriously. Poorly. Anything specific giving you trouble? Humans. I blinked. Humans. Yes. He nodded. You are all extremely confusing. I laughed before I could stop myself. Fair enough. He didn't laugh back. For example, he continued, why do humans ask questions they do not want? Answered, what do you mean? A student asked how I was doing. I explained my emotional condition in detail for 7 minutes. He appeared distressed. I stared at him. You gave a 7-minute answer? It seemed polite. Most people just say they're doing fine. Lucian frowned. Even if they are not. Especially if they're not. He looked genuinely horrified. That is deeply inefficient. By the end of the first hour, I realized Professor Holloway hadn't exaggerated anything. Lucian didn't understand social cues. He didn't understand sarcasm. He thought birthday cards were legal contracts. He believed small talk was a form of psychological warfare. When I asked him what he'd learned during orientation week, he calmly handed me 12 pages of notes analyzing vending machines. You spend an entire week studying snack machines. They appear important. Why? Humans gather around them frequently. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. Okay, we have a lot of work to do. To my surprise, Lucian actually seemed relieved. The expression was subtle, barely visible, but it was there. Good, he said quietly. I would prefer not to fail again. Again? He looked away. Nothing. The answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. For the first time, I felt something strange settle in my chest. Curiosity, maybe even concern. Because beneath all the confusion and awkwardness, Lucian seemed exhausted. Like someone carrying a weight nobody else could see. Outside, rain tapped softly against the library windows. Students drifted between shelves. Everything felt normal. Almost. Then my phone buzzed on the table. A campus alert flashed across the screen. Astronomy department announces rare eclipse event next month. Huh, I muttered. Looks like we're getting an eclipse. Lucian glanced at the notification. 31 days from now. 6:22 p.m. Eastern Time. Duration, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. I stared at him. You know that already? Of course. How? For the first time all afternoon, Lucian looked uncomfortable. Not confused. Not awkward. Uncomfortable. His eyes shifted toward the window where dark clouds rolled across the horizon. Because, he said, softly, that is the day my evaluation ends. A chill ran down my spine. Evaluation. Lucian froze, realizing he'd said too much. Then he slowly stood from his chair. I believe our session is over for today. Lucian, thank you for your assistance, Noah. He gathered his books and walked away before I could ask another question. I watched him disappear into the crowd of students, feeling more unsettled than I should have. Because somehow, despite barely knowing him, I had the strange feeling that Lucian Vale wasn't just hiding a secret. He was hiding a countdown. The next morning, I told myself I was not going to spend an entire day thinking about Lucian Vale and his mysterious countdown. That plan lasted approximately 12 minutes. By 9 o'clock, I was sitting in the student center with a coffee that had already gone cold, staring at my phone and replaying our conversation over and over. Evaluation ends. The words would not leave me alone. Most students did not talk like that. Most students did not know the exact timing of a solar eclipse a month in advance. Most students certainly did not look nervous after accidentally revealing information. I was halfway through convincing myself that Lucien was probably part of some strange academic program when the chair across from me scraped against the floor. I looked up. Lucien stood there holding a tray with 2 untouched breakfasts. "Good morning, Noah," he said. "You appear troubled." I blinked. "Good morning to you too." He carefully placed one of the plates in front of me. I observed that humans often share food when attempting friendship. I stared at the plate. Pancakes, eggs, fruit. Enough food for 3 people. "You bought all this?" "Yes." "For me?" "Yes." "Why?" Lucien seemed confused by the question. "Because you are helping me." Somehow that answer felt both completely sincere and slightly alarming. "Well, thank you." Relief crossed his face. Actual relief. Like he had passed an important test. "Excellent." He sat down. "Then I have succeeded." The strange thing was that the more time I spent with Lucien, the harder it became to see him as intimidating. He still had that impossible presence. People noticed when he entered a room. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. Yet beneath all of that was someone trying very hard to understand a world that seemed to operate on invisible rules. After breakfast, we spent 2 hours reviewing social situations. Most students would have found it ridiculous. Lucien treated every lesson as if it were life or death. "If someone says they are fine, but they are clearly unhappy, what should I do?" he asked. "Ask if they want to talk." He wrote that down immediately. "If someone receives bad news, offer support." He nodded. More notes. "If someone is afraid," I hesitated. "Stay with them if they want company." Something flickered in his expression. Thoughtful, quiet, almost sad. Then the moment passed. By afternoon, we were crossing campus toward the library when a group of students emerged from a nearby building. They were laughing loudly, carrying posters for an upcoming charity event. One of them accidentally bumped into Lucien. "Sorry, man," the student said. Lucien stopped walking. The student kept going. "Noah," Lucien said. "What? Was that an attack?" I nearly choked. "No." "Are you certain?" "Very." "Interesting." He looked genuinely disappointed. I had prepared 3 possible responses. "Please do not tell me what they were." "Understood." We continued walking. A smile threatened to appear despite my best efforts. The day should have felt normal. Instead, a strange tension followed us everywhere. Small things kept happening. Birds landed unusually close whenever Lucien sat outside. Electronic clocks flickered when he became frustrated. A street performer dropped an entire deck of cards after making eye contact with him. Nobody else seemed to notice. I noticed everything. The closer evening came, the more questions I had. Eventually, I stopped outside the library entrance. "Lucien." He turned toward me. "Yes." "What exactly are you evaluating?" For a second, the world seemed to hold its breath. The late sunlight painted the campus in gold and amber. Students crossed the quad. Music drifted from somewhere in the distance. Lucien looked at me for a very long time. Then he answered, "Humanity." My stomach dropped. "Humanity?" "Yes." "What does that mean?" His gaze shifted toward the horizon. I am still determining the answer. Before I could ask another question, a sharp sound echoed across campus. Not loud, not dramatic, just strange, like glass singing in the distance. Lucien went completely still. Every trace of warmth vanished from his expression. For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely powerful. Dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with physical strength. His eyes focused on something I could not see. "That is unfortunate," he said quietly. "What is?" A shadow crossed his face. "They have found me." The air suddenly felt colder. "Who found you?" Lucien's jaw tightened. Far across campus, near the administration building, 3 figures in dark clothing stood perfectly still among the crowd. Watching us. Watching him. And somehow, despite the distance, I knew with absolute certainty that they were not there for me. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. The 3 figures stood near the administration building without moving, perfectly still while hundreds of students crossed the quad around them. Nobody else seemed to notice anything strange. Nobody except Lucien. His attention never left them. Neither did mine. "Do you know them?" I asked quietly. "Unfortunately," Lucien replied. The answer sent a chill through me. Before I could ask another question, one of the figures began walking toward us. Then another. Then the third. Their movements were calm and measured, but something about them felt wrong. Not threatening, just out of place, like actors who had wandered into the wrong movie. Students unconsciously stepped around them without making eye contact. Should we leave? I asked. Lucien considered it. That would only delay the conversation. Conversation? Yes. His voice carried the same resigned tone people used when discussing taxes or dental appointments. The nearest figure stopped a few feet away. He was tall, dressed in an expensive black suit that looked completely ridiculous on a college campus. Silver gloves covered his hands. His expression remained unreadable. Then he bowed. Actually bowed. Right there in the middle of Westbridge University. My brain stopped functioning. Your Majesty, the man said. Lucien closed his eyes. Please do not call me that here. The man straightened immediately. My apologies. I stared between them. Your Majesty? Neither answered. The second man stepped forward holding what looked suspiciously like a leather folder embossed with gold symbols. The council requests your immediate return. Lucien sighed. Denied. The evaluation period continues to produce unacceptable results. Noted. Humanity remains inefficient. Also noted. The third man glanced at me for the first time. And this individual? Lucien moved slightly. Not much. Just enough to place himself between me and the strangers. The motion was subtle, but I noticed. So did they. He is my tutor, Lucien said. Then he is influencing the assessment. Correct. The three men exchanged looks. I suddenly felt like I was standing in the middle of a conversation that could determine the future of something much larger than I understood. The first man opened the folder. In that case, Your Majesty, the council proposes an adjustment. Lucien frowned. What adjustment? The man handed over a document. Lucien read it. Then, for the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely annoyed. Absolutely not. It would improve public perception. No. It would strengthen social integration. No. It would satisfy multiple evaluation criteria. Lucien looked ready to throw the document into another dimension. My curiosity finally won. Can somebody tell me what is happening? Lucien hesitated. Then he slowly handed me the paper. I looked down. The title alone nearly made me laugh. Human Social Integration Partnership Agreement. Below it were several paragraphs of formal language. Then one sentence highlighted in bold. Designated human companion required. I blinked twice. Companion. The suited man nodded. A trusted public associate. You mean a friend? An officially recognized one. I looked at Lucien. You need paperwork to have a friend? Apparently. His expression suggested he hated every second of this. Somehow that made the situation even funnier. And they want me? I asked. You have already spent the most time with him, the man explained. The council believes your continued presence may improve the outcome. Lucien folded his arms. This is ridiculous. Perhaps, the man replied. However, failure remains a possibility. Silence followed. Lucien's jaw tightened. Failure. The word hit differently now. Whatever this evaluation was, it clearly mattered. A lot. Students continued walking nearby. A few glanced toward us. One group of girls openly stared at Lucien before continuing across campus. To my surprise, Lucien barely noticed. His attention remained fixed on the document. Then one of the girls turned around and waved. Hey, Lucien, she called. Lucien looked confused. Do I know her? I laughed. She was in your economics class. Interesting. You sat next to her for 3 weeks. I see. The girl looked slightly disappointed when he failed to wave back. For some reason, an unexpected feeling settled in my chest. Relief. Which made absolutely no sense. I barely knew the guy. Before I could examine that thought further, Lucien suddenly held out the document toward me. Would you consider it? Consider what? The agreement. I looked at him. You are seriously asking me to become your official friend? A faint hint of embarrassment crossed his face. It was the most human expression I had ever seen from him. When you say it like that, it sounds absurd. Because it is absurd. That is fair. Despite myself, I smiled. Lucien smiled back. Small. Genuine. Warm enough to completely transform his face. For a second, the entire world seemed brighter. Then my attention caught something on his hand. A ring. Dark silver. Intricately carved. I had never noticed it before. Strange symbols shimmered across its surface before disappearing. The moment our eyes met, Lucien quickly lowered his hand. Too quickly, like he did not want me seeing it. A secret. Another one. And judging by the way the three suited men suddenly looked nervous, it was an important secret. Very important. Because the first man quietly cleared his throat and said, Your Majesty, the seal appears to be awakening. The moment the suited man mentioned the seal, Lucien closed his hand around the ring. Whatever had briefly appeared across its surface vanished instantly. The three strangers exchanged uneasy looks before lowering their heads. It was the first time I had seen them defer to anyone. Lucien did not explain. He simply folded the agreement, slipped it into his coat pocket, and started walking. Lucien, I called, hurrying after him. You cannot just drop a sentence like that and leave. I can, he replied calmly. I have extensive experience doing exactly that. Under normal circumstances, I would have laughed. Instead, my attention remained fixed on the ring, the seal, the title, the strange council. None of it made sense. Yet somehow it felt increasingly clear that Lucien was hiding something much bigger than a scholarship program or a secret organization. The next few days should have been simple. They were not. Word spread across campus faster than wildfire. Nobody knew about the council, but plenty of people noticed that Lucien and I were suddenly spending nearly every day together. We studied together, ate lunch together, crossed campus together. The official partnership agreement had somehow been processed through the university administration system, making me Lucien's designated academic mentor. Students immediately began talking. Some were curious, others were jealous. A few were openly annoyed. By Friday afternoon, I was regretting every life choice that had brought me here. The worst encounter happened outside the student center. I had just finished tutoring when a familiar voice stopped me. Noah Carter. Long time no see. My stomach sank. Derek Lawson. Student council president. Debate team captain. Professional source of headaches. We had worked together on a campus project last year. He had spent 6 months treating every conversation like a competition. Derek. He glanced toward Lucien. So this is the famous transfer student. Lucien nodded politely. Correct. Derek smiled, but there was something sharp underneath it. People keep saying you are the reason he is succeeding now. I would not go that far, I said. Funny. Derek folded his arms. Because nobody seems to understand why someone like him spends all his time with someone like you. There it was. The insult hidden inside a smile. Several nearby students went quiet. Listening. Watching. I hated situations like this. Derek always knew exactly how to make a room uncomfortable. What is that supposed to mean? I asked. Nothing. His grin widened. I just think it is interesting. Most people would choose someone more useful. The words landed harder than I wanted them to. Maybe because a small part of me already worried about the same thing. Lucien was brilliant in ways I could not explain. Important in ways I did not understand. Meanwhile, I was just a graduate assistant struggling to pay bills and survive finals. Before I could respond, Lucien spoke. You are mistaken. Derek blinked. Excuse me. Lucien's voice remained perfectly calm. Your assessment is inaccurate. Is it? Yes. The air seemed to shift. Not dramatically, just enough to make everyone pay attention. Lucien looked directly at Derek. Noah has improved my academic performance, social integration, emotional understanding, and overall evaluation outcomes. Derek laughed awkwardly. Sure, but furthermore, Lucien continued, he is patient, intelligent, and consistently kind even when dealing with exhausting situations. I stared at him. So did everyone else. Lucien appeared completely unaware of the effect he was having. He was simply stating facts as far as he was concerned. Therefore, he finished, if one of us should be considered fortunate in this arrangement, it is me. Silence. Absolute silence. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, then quietly excused himself and walked away. The second he disappeared, conversations erupted around us. Students whispered. Some smiled. Others looked shocked. I stood frozen beside Lucien. You know, I said eventually, most people do not defend their tutors in public. Lucien looked confused. Was I defending you? I laughed despite myself. You absolutely were. Interesting. He considered that. Then I believe I made the correct decision. We continued toward the library. For some reason, my chest felt lighter, warmer. The strange thing was that none of it felt fake anymore. Not the lunches, not the tutoring sessions, not the ridiculous partnership agreement. Somewhere along the way, spending time with Lucien had stopped feeling like an obligation, and that realization was far more dangerous than I wanted to admit. As we reached the library steps, a black luxury car pulled silently to the curb across the street. Every window was tinted. The engine barely made a sound. Several students stopped to stare. My attention immediately shifted to Lucien. He had gone completely still. Again, the same way he had when the council appeared. Slowly, the rear window lowered. A silver envelope rested alone on the leather seat inside. No driver, no passenger, just the envelope. Waiting. Lucien's expression darkened. That, he said quietly, is not supposed to be here. For the first time since meeting him, I felt genuine fear in his voice. The black car remained parked across the street for exactly 30 seconds. Then the rear window slid shut. The vehicle pulled away without a sound, disappearing into evening traffic as if it had never been there. Around us, students returned to their conversations. Nobody seemed particularly concerned. Nobody except Lucien. He was staring at the empty street with an expression I had never seen before. Not confusion. Not frustration. Worry. Real worry. What was that? I asked. Lucien did not answer immediately. A problem, he said at last. That is not an answer. It is the only one I can provide right now. Normally I would have pushed harder. Instead, something about his voice stopped me. We spent the rest of the walk in silence. The next few days felt strange. Lucien became more distracted, more guarded. He still attended every tutoring session, still listened carefully during lessons, still asked questions about human behavior that somehow managed to be both sincere and ridiculous. Yet something had changed. Sometimes I would catch him staring at his ring. Other times he would pause mid-conversation as if listening to a voice nobody else could hear. The distance bothered me more than it should have. Then came the gala. Westbridge hosted an annual donor event every spring. Students, faculty, alumni, and sponsors gathered in the largest building on campus for speeches, fundraising, and networking. I only attended because Professor Holloway practically threatened me. You need connections, he insisted. And besides, your transfer student will be there. Looking back, I should have known something was wrong the moment Lucien arrived. He stepped out of a sleek black vehicle that looked more expensive than my entire apartment building. Not rented. Not borrowed. Familiar. The same type of car that had appeared outside the library. The same silent elegance. The same impossible presence. Conversations immediately slowed. Heads turned. Faculty members who barely acknowledged students suddenly approached him with practiced smiles. Wealthy donors greeted him by name. By name. I stood frozen near the refreshments table. Since when does everybody know Lucien? I muttered. You mean you do not know? A voice asked beside me. I turned. Derek Lawson stood there holding a glass of sparkling water. His expression carried something dangerously close to amusement. Know what? Derek blinked. Noah, are you serious? A terrible feeling settled in my stomach. Derek, you really do not know. He laughed softly. Wow. Every instinct told me I was about to hate this conversation. Know what? Derek nodded toward Lucien. That is Lucien Vale. Yes, I am aware. Lucien Vale the heir. My stomach dropped. The heir to what? Derek stared at me. Vale Industries. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Vale Industries. Everyone knew that name. Technology, energy, finance, infrastructure. One of the largest private organizations in the world. Their influence reached everywhere. Billion-dollar projects, international partnerships, endless headlines. I looked back toward Lucien. He was currently speaking with 3 university trustees. They looked nervous, respectful, almost deferential. That is impossible, I said. Derek shrugged. Not really. He is a student. He is both. My pulse pounded in my ears. Suddenly everything made sense. The luxury cars, the council, the bodyguard-like figures, the secrecy, the way important people reacted around him. Why did he not tell me? Derek raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a question for your official friend. Then he walked away. I barely noticed. Across the room, Lucien caught my eye. His expression immediately softened. He started moving toward me. For the first time since meeting him, I stepped back. The change hit him instantly. I watched confusion flicker across his face. Then concern. Noah, he said when he reached me. You are upset. You think. Lucien frowned. What happened? I laughed once. Short, sharp, disbelieving. What happened? He remained silent. How long were you planning to keep lying to me? The words landed harder than I intended. Around us, music continued. Guests laughed. Glasses clinked. Yet suddenly it felt like we were standing alone. I did not lie. Lucien said quietly. You never mentioned who you were. You never asked. That is your defense. Something hurt inside my chest. Not because he was wealthy. Not because he was powerful. Because I had trusted him. I thought we were building something real. Meanwhile, it felt like everyone else knew the truth except me. Lucien's expression shifted. For the first time, he looked genuinely troubled. Noah, how many other secrets are there? I asked. He opened his mouth, then stopped. And that was my answer. Too many. I took a step back. Then another. The distance between us suddenly felt enormous. I need some air. Please wait. No. His voice followed me as I turned away. Noah. I kept walking, because if I looked back, I was not sure I would be able to leave. Behind me, the music continued. The gala continued. The entire evening continued. But for the first time since meeting Lucien Vale, I wondered whether any part of our friendship had been real. And across the ballroom, hidden beneath the cuff of his sleeve, the symbols on his silver ring began glowing again. Rain started 20 minutes after I left the gala. Not a gentle drizzle. A cold spring downpour that turned sidewalks silver and painted the city in blurred reflections. Normally, I would have called a rideshare. Tonight, I kept walking. My thoughts were louder than the storm anyway. Lucien Vale, heir to one of the most powerful organizations in the world, owner of secrets stacked on top of other secrets. And somehow the part that bothered me most was not the money. It was that he had looked at me every day like he trusted me while keeping entire pieces of his life locked away. By the time I reached my apartment building, I was soaked. My shoes squished against the lobby floor. My jacket weighed twice as much as it should have. I rode the elevator up, unlocked my door, and immediately regretted not bringing an umbrella. A headache was already forming behind my eyes. Perfect. Just perfect. I dropped onto the couch and stared at the ceiling. The apartment felt unusually quiet. Empty. Which was ridiculous because I lived alone. Yet over the past few weeks I had somehow gotten used to seeing messages from Lucien. Questions about assignments. Questions about social situations. Questions about why humans enjoyed reality television despite claiming to dislike it. The silence felt wrong. Around midnight a knock echoed through the apartment. I frowned. Nobody visited this late. Another knock followed. Slow. Careful. I opened the door. Lucien stood there holding an umbrella. Rainwater glistened across his dark coat. For a moment neither of us spoke. How did you find my address? I finally asked. The university has emergency contact records. That sounds slightly concerning. That is fair. His answer almost made me smile. Almost. What are you doing here? Lucien looked down briefly. An oddly human gesture. Nervous. I wished to explain. I should have said no. I should have closed the door. Instead I stepped aside. Lucien entered quietly. The apartment suddenly felt much smaller. He removed his coat and carefully folded it over a chair. Then he noticed the untouched bottle of pain relievers on my kitchen counter. You have a headache. I am fine. That is what humans say when they are not fine. I hated that he had learned that from me. Without another word, he disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, he returned carrying a glass of water. Take these. I stared at him. Did you seriously come here to argue and take care of me at the same time? Ideally, only one of those. Against my better judgment, I accepted the medicine. The headache had become impossible to ignore. Silence settled between us. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Finally, Lucien spoke. I did not tell you about my family because I wanted at least one relationship that felt normal. I looked up. His expression remained calm, but there was something fragile underneath it. Something real. Normal. I repeated. Everyone I meet already knows who they think I am. His gaze drifted toward the dark city outside. They know the company, the wealth, the expectations. They know the title before they know me. The loneliness in his voice caught me off guard. You have all that power, I said quietly. Power does not prevent loneliness. The answer came immediately, like he had lived with it for years. Lucien sat across from me. The distance between us felt strangely deliberate, respectful. My entire life has been managed by committees, advisors, and expectations, he continued. Every decision measured, every action evaluated, every friendship questioned. My chest tightened. For the first time, I could see the person beneath the mystery, beneath the impossible confidence, beneath the strange counsel and the expensive cars. And then I met you. I looked away first, not because I wanted to, because holding his gaze suddenly felt dangerous. You treated me like a person, he said softly. Not a title. The apartment grew very quiet. Rain continued falling beyond the glass. Somewhere below, a car passed through wet streets. You still should have told me, I said. I know. There was no argument. No excuse. Just honesty. Somehow that hurt more. And healed something at the same time. A faint vibration interrupted the moment. Lucien glanced toward his hand. The silver ring. Symbols shimmered across its surface again, brighter than before. His expression immediately changed. The warmth vanished. Concern returned. What is it? I asked. Lucien stared at the glowing symbols, then at me. For several seconds he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. The truth. My pulse quickened. About what? Lucien met my eyes. About who I really am. The room seemed to freeze around us. And somehow I knew that whatever came next would change everything. The truth never came that night. Before Lucien could explain, the ring on his hand flashed once and then went dark. Whatever message it carried seemed to drain the color from his face. He stood abruptly. I have to leave. Lucien. Tomorrow, he promised. I will tell you everything tomorrow. Then he was gone. I spent the rest of the night staring at my apartment ceiling. Tomorrow never came. By sunrise, the entire campus was on fire. Not literally. Socially. My phone started vibrating before I even got out of bed. Messages. Notifications. Missed calls. Group chats exploding faster than I could open them. At first I assumed another campus rumor had surfaced. Then I saw my own face on the screen. My stomach dropped. A photo of me and Lucien stood at the top of every student forum. Lunches. Study sessions. Walks across campus. The gala. Even the night outside my apartment building. Someone had been following us for weeks. Worse, a document appeared beneath the images. Human Social Integration Partnership Agreement. The same agreement the council had shown us. Except this version looked different. Edited. Manipulated. Highlighted sections claimed I would receive financial compensation for maintaining a public friendship with Lucien. Additional pages suggested I had approached him intentionally, that I had planned everything from the beginning, that I had targeted one of the richest heirs in the country. By the time I arrived on campus, people were already staring. Conversations stopped when I passed. Whispers followed me across sidewalks. A girl from one of my classes actually moved her chair away when I entered the room. Unbelievable, somebody muttered. Guess he played the long game. I knew it felt fake. Poor Lucien. Each comment landed like a stone. The worst part was how convincing the evidence looked. Even I might have believed it if I had not lived through the truth. Around noon, campus administration announced an emergency gathering at the main auditorium. Attendance strongly encouraged. Translation, everybody was going. By the time I arrived, hundreds of students filled the room. Faculty lined the walls. Reporters stood near the entrance. The atmosphere felt electric. Dangerous. I immediately spotted Derek Lawson near the front. He looked entirely too comfortable. Then I saw Lucien. He stood on stage beside several university trustees. Perfect posture. Calm expression. Impossible to read. My chest tightened. He had not answered any messages. Not one. The auditorium lights dimmed. A trustee stepped forward. As many of you know, misinformation has circulated regarding Mr. Lucien Vale and Mr. Noah Carter. Murmurs spread instantly. Screens behind the stage lit up. More photos appeared. More fake documents. More accusations. Every humiliating rumor displayed for hundreds of people to examine. I felt exposed. Angry. Embarrassed. Like my entire life had been reduced to a headline. Then the trustee delivered the final blow. Questions have been raised regarding whether Mr. Carter manipulated this relationship for personal gain. The room erupted. Some students shook their heads. Others whispered. A few openly laughed. I stood frozen. Across the stage, Lucien remained silent. 1 second. 2 seconds. 5. The silence became unbearable. My pulse pounded. Say something. Defend me. Explain. Anything. But Lucien said nothing. The longer he stayed quiet, the worse it felt. Around me, people began drawing conclusions. See, someone whispered. Even he knows it is true. That is brutal. Poor guy got caught. My throat tightened. Maybe this was it. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe all those moments meant more to me than they did to him. Maybe I had trusted the wrong person. On stage, Lucien finally moved. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped toward the microphone. The room immediately fell silent. Every eye followed him. Every camera pointed his way. Lucien looked out across the crowd. Then his gaze found mine. For a brief moment, the noise disappeared. Just me and him. Then he spoke. Everything you have been shown today is false. Shock rippled through the auditorium. Lucien continued. Calm. Precise. Unshakable. Noah Carter has never requested money, favors, influence, or personal benefits from me. More silence. More stunned faces. Lucien's expression hardened. Furthermore, any claim suggesting he manipulated our relationship is not only inaccurate. It is insulting. A trustee shifted uncomfortably beside him. Lucien ignored it. Noah helped me when nobody else would. He remained patient when I was difficult. He treated me with kindness when he had no reason to do so. My chest ached. The room hung on every word. If anyone was deceived, Lucien said quietly, it was him. Confusion spread through the crowd. Even I froze. Then Lucien removed the silver ring from his hand. Gasps echoed throughout the auditorium. Symbols ignited across its surface like living light. The trustees immediately stepped back. Fear flashed across their faces. Real fear. Lucien stared at the glowing ring, then at the audience, then at me. Because there is something none of you know about who I really am. The auditorium became so quiet that I could hear the hum of the lights above us. Hundreds of people stared at Lucien. Reporters stopped typing. Trustees looked uneasy. Even Derek Lawson seemed uncertain for the first time all day. The silver ring rested in Lucien's open palm, glowing softly as symbols moved across its surface like living script. Nobody understood what they were seeing. Nobody except the three suited council representatives who had suddenly appeared near the back of the room. Their expressions were grim. Lucien stepped closer to the microphone. Before anyone reaches another conclusion, he said calmly, I would like to discuss evidence. A massive screen behind him flickered. New files appeared. Dates, security logs, communication records, official authentication seals. The forged agreement displayed earlier vanished from the screen and was replaced by the original document. Murmurs swept through the crowd immediately. Even from where I stood, the differences were obvious. Entire paragraphs had been inserted, signatures altered, payment clauses fabricated. The room erupted with whispers. Lucien remained perfectly composed. The document distributed this morning was modified. Another file appeared, then another. Surveillance footage from university servers. Timestamps. Access records. Someone in the crowd gasped. A name appeared on the screen. Derek Lawson. Every conversation stopped. Derek's face lost color instantly. That is impossible, he said. Lucien did not even look at him. The university information system recorded every unauthorized change. More records appeared. More proof. Every edit traced back to a single account. Every fabricated image linked to the same source. The evidence was overwhelming. Clean. Precise. Impossible to dismiss. The trustees exchanged stunned looks. Reporters immediately began taking photographs of the screen. Derek took a step backward. You cannot prove I released anything. Lucien finally turned toward him. His expression remained calm, which somehow made it even worse. Actually, I can. Another image appeared. Security footage from a campus computer lab. Derek working alone late at night. Uploading files. Sending messages. Creating fake records. The entire auditorium watched in silence. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended him. Because there was nothing left to defend. Derek swallowed hard. I was trying to protect the university. No, Lucien replied. You were trying to protect your ego. The words landed with devastating simplicity. Derek looked away first. Campus security quietly approached him. No shouting. No confrontation. No dramatic scene. Just consequences. Within moments, he was escorted from the auditorium. The doors closed behind him. Silence returned. Lucien faced the audience again. Noah Carter never manipulated me. His voice carried through the room effortlessly. He never asked for money. He never requested influence. He never attempted to benefit from my position. I felt every eye in the building shift toward me. Heat rushed into my face. Lucien continued anyway. In fact, Noah repeatedly treated me as though my status was irrelevant. A faint smile touched his expression, which was occasionally frustrating. Soft laughter spread through the crowd. The tension eased slightly. Then his smile faded. The truth is much simpler. For a moment, he looked directly at me. Not the audience. Not the trustees. Me. The partnership agreement was real. Gasps echoed throughout the room. My heart skipped. Lucien nodded once. Initially, our arrangement existed because certain organizations believed I required assistance integrating into human society. More whispers. More curiosity. In other words, he said, it began as an obligation. The room leaned forward collectively, waiting. Then came the moment that changed everything. Lucien's voice softened. Not weaker, just more honest. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like one. My pulse thundered in my ears. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Noah taught me how to understand people. His gaze never left mine. He taught me patience, friendship, trust. He showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. The auditorium was completely silent. If this arrangement was once artificial, Lucien said quietly, it is not anymore. Emotion caught unexpectedly in my chest. Around us, cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Students stared in shock. Yet none of it seemed to matter. The only thing that existed was the sincerity in his eyes. Lucien took a single step forward. Given the choice between protecting my reputation and protecting Noah's name, I will choose Noah every time. The words hit harder than anything else he had said. The audience erupted. Applause exploded across the auditorium. Not polite applause. Real applause. Loud enough to shake the room. Some students stood. Then more followed. Faculty joined in. Even the trustees seemed stunned. Through it all, Lucien remained focused on me. The noise faded into the background. For the first time since this entire disaster began, I understood something clearly. None of this was about wealth, or status, or secret agreements. It was about him. And somehow, impossibly, he had chosen me in front of everyone. Then the glowing symbols on the silver rings suddenly flared brighter than ever before. The applause faltered. The council representatives immediately straightened. Concern flashed across their faces. Lucien looked down at the ring. Whatever message appeared there erased the warmth from his expression. Slowly, he lifted his eyes toward me. "There is one more truth," he said. "And after today, I cannot hide it any longer." The applause slowly faded, but the tension remained. Hundreds of people were still watching. Cameras were still recording. Nobody left their seat. Lucien stood at the center of the stage with the glowing ring resting in his hand. For a long moment, he seemed to be deciding whether to continue. Then he exhaled quietly. "My name is Lucien Vale," he said. "That part is true." A nervous laugh rippled through the auditorium. It vanished almost immediately. The company, the wealth, the title of heir, those are also true. His gaze shifted toward the council representatives at the back of the room. But they are not the whole truth. The symbols across the ring brightened again. The air itself seemed to hold still. The organization many of you know as Vale Industries was never created simply to build businesses. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Trustees exchanged confused looks. Reporters leaned forward. Lucien's voice remained steady. "For generations, my family has protected a responsibility far older than any corporation." He paused. "And I was born to inherit that responsibility." Nobody understood exactly what he meant, but somehow everyone sensed the weight behind the words. The evaluation I mentioned was never about grades. His eyes found mine again. It was about humanity. A silence settled over the room. Not disbelief. Anticipation. For most of my life, I was taught to observe people from a distance. To judge. To measure. To prepare for decisions that would affect countless lives. The loneliness in his voice returned. The same loneliness I had heard in my apartment. I was told that attachment creates weakness. His fingers tightened slightly around the ring. Then I met Noah. My heart immediately forgot how to function. A few students turned toward me. I barely noticed. Lucien continued. He argued with me, corrected me, made fun of my questions. Soft laughter echoed through the room. He treated me like an ordinary person. His expression warmed, which was a completely new experience. More laughter followed. This time, even the trustees smiled. Somewhere between tutoring sessions, awkward conversations, and his repeated attempts to teach me how normal friendships work, my evaluation changed. The glowing symbols finally began to fade. Humanity changed. His eyes never left mine. I changed. The room remained silent, listening, feeling every word. Then Lucien did something that shocked everyone. He stepped down from the stage. Not toward the trustees. Not toward the reporters. Toward me. Every camera immediately followed. Every head turned. My pulse hammered so loudly I could barely hear anything else. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that the rest of the auditorium seemed to disappear. "Noah," he said quietly. My name sounded different when he said it. Softer. More important. "I never intended to hurt you." I swallowed. "I know. I should have trusted you with the truth sooner." "Probably." A small smile appeared on his face. "That is a fair assessment." The audience laughed again. Somehow the tension finally broke. For the first time all day, I smiled back. Lucien reached into his coat pocket and removed a familiar document. The partnership agreement. The original version. The one that had started everything. This contract created an obligation. He looked down at it briefly, then back at me. I no longer need it. Before anyone could react, he tore the agreement neatly in half. Gasps filled the room. Pieces of paper drifted toward the floor. The official arrangement was gone. Finished. Complete. "No more evaluations," Lucien said. "No more requirements." His voice remained calm, but there was something vulnerable underneath it. "If you stay in my life, I want it to be because you choose to." For a moment, emotion made it difficult to speak. Every fear, every misunderstanding, every secret, all of it seemed smaller now. Simpler. "That is good," I finally said, "because I was getting tired of being your officially assigned friend." Genuine laughter exploded throughout the auditorium. Even Lucien laughed. The sound was rare, warm, real. Then, without hesitation, I held out my hand. Not because of a contract. Not because of a council. Not because of expectations. Because it was what I wanted. Lucien looked at my hand for a second. Then he took it. The applause returned instantly. Louder than before. Students stood. Faculty stood. Reporters forgot to take notes. Nobody cared about scandals anymore. They cared about the choice happening right in front of them. Two people choosing each other freely. As the crowd celebrated around us, Lucien glanced toward the auditorium doors. Evening sunlight spilled through the glass outside. The storm had finally passed. What happens now? I asked. He looked at me with that familiar expression that somehow managed to be powerful and uncertain at the same time. Honestly, a small smile touched his lips. I still have a great deal to learn about being human. I squeezed his hand once. Good. We started walking toward the exit together. Side by side. No contracts. No secrets. No obligations. Just a beginning. And as the doors opened to the golden light beyond, Lucien smiled and said, "Then perhaps the next lesson should be how to build a future together."